All right, well, let's get into some this and some that, some of this, some of that, if we can. What is happening? So, yeah, this tweeted out from Christopher Cartwright. Sorry for the shakiness of my computer. Let's get rid of the shakes. He says, guess what will be increasing next few years thanks to central banks. CO2 emissions and oil consumption as expected. Read this, let it sink in. Daily oil demand may climb at its fastest rate in the history of the market in 2021. That would be this year. COP26. Seriously? I actually wanted to read this good reply. Live Simply says, exactly, that's why the Great Reset, quote unquote, is not happening. If anything, it is the great return to normal. There will be about as much new green tech to replace oil as the last time Biden was in the White House. All of it will go towards our increase in energy demand, just as you quoted. Yeah, you know. They go on to say it is not. Live Simply goes on to say it is not obvious. Is it not obvious by now that they are not going to fix global warming, weirding, climate change, wars, justice for killing people of color, justice warriors, and animals? You name it. It will never be obvious. These so-called fixes are not going to happen since we know this. What should we do? Anyways, yeah, that's I think the Great Reset is happening on the level of implementing control apparatuses, ramping up AI and tech features that will control your life. Right? They're gonna try and the new the coming tech dystopia is a thing that is actually happening, right? And there's also a lot of economic damage and wealth inequality being done in the face of coronavirus, right? The billionaires have reaped massive profits from this pandemic, right? This is a very profitable situation for the people in charge and for the people, that already have everything already anyways. But all the corporations, all the large corporations, all the big pharma, big tech, all those people are making money hand over fist. This is very profitable for them. So yeah, on some levels, the Great Reset is happening, but on the levels, and this is what I've been saying, on the level of, the whole, the messaging of we're going to have a green recovery and, equity, and we're going to help people of color. No, that's not going to happen. And the green recovery is actually, a brown recovery. It's a green-brown alliance. Global oil demand could exceed pre-COVID levels without clean energy moves. The world's oil demand could exceed pre-COVID-19 levels. In the title of this live stream, I said, are going to, because they are, because it's not could. There's not a could about it. Unless we just continue down this bumpy road of lockdowns and, and which could happen. But if the people in power have their way, everything is going to go back to normal. That's what they want. They want the airline industry to survive and keep, expanding. Expansion is the name of the game. The world's oil demand could exceed pre-COVID-19 levels within the next 2 years unless concrete government action and legislation leads to a much stronger move towards clean energy, according to the International Energy Agency. Figures from the global energy watchdog threaten to dash hopes that the world's consumption of oil may have peaked in 2019, before the coronavirus pandemic caused oil demand to plummet by 9 million barrels a day. The IEA's influential report found that a rebound in oil demand, particularly in developing economies across Asia, could lead the world's appetite for crude to break above 100 million barrels of oil a day. 100 million. Just imagine 100 million barrels of oil a day for the first time by 2023. I mean, just 1 billion barrels of oil. 1 billion barrels of oil is a shit ton of oil, right? Massive. Massive, but we're talking about 100 million barrels of oil. 100 million barrels of oil a day. Do I hear 1 trillion? Sold. It comes after a warning from the IEA last summer that the world's daily oil demand may climb at its fastest rate in history. In the history of the market in 2021, unless green policies are adopted to dampen a record-breaking oil demand rebound. So are these green policies, are these just going to be just injected into society this year? Are we going to have this green turnaround in policies in the next 9 months? Is this going to happen? It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. The leaders of the world are just going to snap awake. Whoa, hey, whoa, what were we thinking? Let's do it differently, guys. Nope. To date, government efforts to establish a green economic recovery are failing, even to reach the levels of green spending seen in the stimulus that followed the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah, we just covered that the other day. The IEA's prediction for the year ahead show the world's oil demand may climb by 5.5 million barrels of oil a day, one of the fastest annual climbs on record, to an average of 96.6 million barrels a day. That's so very close to 100 million. We're talking about 100. I was sorry. Let me rewind. I was saying 1 billion barrels of oil a day. Scratch that. It says 100 million barrels of oil, but 1 million barrels of oil is a lot. 100 million is a lot. They're talking about 96.6. Sorry, guys. I realize my mistake now. So, 1 billion barrels of oil a day. Let's go. The oil demand surge is expected to continue through the IEA's forecast, which extends to 2026, where it reaches above 104 million barrels a day. This would be more than 4 million barrels a day higher. I mean, it is phenomenal, though. A day. Right? A day. 1 day. That is just amazing. Mind-boggling. This would be more than 4 million barrels a day higher than 2019, and during a crucial decade for reducing carbon emissions to avert a climate catastrophe. The COVID-19 crisis causes a historic decline in global oil demand, but not necessarily a lasting one, the IEA's executive director of faith, Fatih Birol, said. The IEA warned that the world's oil demand was still reeling from the massive shock triggered by COVID-19 and continues to face uncertainties which are testing the industry like never before. The IEA's analysis, which is used by global governments to help inform their energy policies, found that demand for aviation fuels, which was the hardest hit by the pandemic, could gradually return to pre-crisis levels. However, a shift to online meetings and conferences, along with corporate efforts to cut costs and cautious return to leisure travel, could permanently alter travel trends and keep oil demand growth in check. Could. I mean, people can do this themselves as well, right? Maybe the policies of the governments of the planet aren't ready to do this, but people themselves could go like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to go on that plane flight. Maybe I don't need to go on that vacation. I'm not seeing it in the timelines of my social media very much because everybody's like, let's go. I need to get on that plane now. Oh, let's go. Plenty of people flying during the pandemic as well, right? Lasting changes to travel and office work triggered by the pandemic, coupled with the acceleration of clean energy technologies, caused many energy experts to conclude that oil demand might never return to pre-pandemic levels. This was shared by companies including the oil company BP, which predicted that demand for oil may never fully recover from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and may begin an unprecedented multi-decade decline for the first time in modern history. You mean, peak oil wouldn't do that? You're not gonna let anybody in on the secret of peak oil as well? The IEA agreed that overall oil demand in advanced economies, which is much higher per capita than developing countries, is unlikely to return to pre-COVID levels, in part because of the growing uptake of electric vehicles and other green transport options. However, about 90% of the world's growing oil demand, 90%, in the next 5 years will be driven by countries in Asia, albeit at a slower pace than before the pandemic, and will be underpinned by rising populations and incomes. You mean a growing amount of young people? Achieving an orderly transition away from oil is essential to meet climate goals, but it will require major policy changes from governments as well as accelerated behavioral changes. Without that, the global oil demand is set to increase every year between now and 2026. For the world's oil demand, I mean, these are just, like, oh, we got to do something. We really got to do something different, guys. The way that we, the way that we suggested that people do it. It's not going that way. Man, we got to do something different. For the world's oil demand to peak anytime soon, significant action is needed immediately to improve fuel efficiency standards, boost electric vehicle sales. No. Curb oil use in the power sector. So just ending on a big old fat dud of a paragraph right there. Yeah. We really got to turn this around, guys, and we got to curb oil demand, and we got to do that by manufacturing a bunch of things. Does that make sense? Does that sound right? Sure. I just read the news in the morning and go, golly gee, oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Meh. What are we gonna do? All right, Rockfin, come on back. Oh man, I didn't even start recording this. I was so late and so discombobulated I didn't even start recording this. What am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. It's fine. Everything's fine. Yes, Rockfin has dark mode. You can enjoy dark mode on Rockfin. Again, you can watch, if the Rockfin app does not work for you, you can go to a web page, whatever you're using on your phone, Safari or whatever your web browser is, type in rockfin.com and go there and watch the video. It works. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Suzanne asks, what happened to Tom Hartman's show? I don't know. I was just going to say something about that, but whatever. Fuzzy, what's up? Fuzzy Bear on Rockfin for the Biosphere on Rockfin. Jay Thadcast. More people on Rockfin, if you please. Steve Moyer says there is an abundance of oil. Of course there is. They just need to get it out of the ground and sell it to people. It is St. Patrick's Day, right? I see people talking about St. Patty's Day. There's a big protest going on, by the way, in D.C. Clovers for Assange, also known as Action for Assange. And I thought that these people only call me when I'm doing my live stream. It's interesting. It's interesting. Anyways, yeah, there's a big action going on. Protest going on. I think that Convo Couch and Slow News Day are covering it. Probably Nico House too. So if you guys want to go watch coverage of the Action for Assange, it's on those pages. Let's go to this tweet from Roger Hallam. The climate crisis will destroy all rights and progressive advances of the past 200 years in the next decade. Only civil resistance, not protest, will save civilization, and repressive laws will aid this process by producing backfiring effects. Strange but true. Yeah, right. So he's talking about the new law being proposed in the UK about criminalizing, upping the criminalizing of protests. Right. And I was thinking about that too, right? So, you know, the mainstream media keeps talking about protest. It's, you know, it's your right to protest, but only if you do it in the way that we allow you to do it, right? No, only if it's a sanctioned protest, only if you get a permit, right? No, you know, no, protest is something that is disruptive. And it is your right to protest. And it is your right to resist civilly, right? There are many ways that you can protest. You can peacefully protest. You can angrily protest, right? There's lots of different, there's a whole spectrum of ways in which people protest. But one of the least effective ways is to, you know, protest at a march that has a permit and you have a cup of coffee in your hand and a banner and you're like, no, we don't like it. Like that's the way in which nothing actually ever happens. So it's usually only the very disruptive ways, forms of protest that actually get the power structure a little shaken in their boots, a little like, uh-oh. Those are the ways that work, right? So, or the ways that get people's attention enough to you know, to move the needle, if you will. And that will be true going into the future. And whatever it is that we will do, or whatever shall be done, in the name of the ongoing hijinks of our friendly neighborhood politicians. Greta Thunberg says Sweden and Finland team up with the governments of Poland and Hungary to defend burning biomass for energy in the EU. Can't say that I'm surprised. So she's calling out these countries that are saying like, yeah, biomass is a good idea. You know, let's just cut down all the trees.